Recording.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentors on Tap. We took just a couple of days off there for a much needed break and retooling of some things. But we're back, and hopefully we're going to be able to keep this up as a regular deal now for a while. I'm Steve Grenzer with Steam Driven Media, and sitting across from me is Doc Sheldon. How you
Hello,
doing,
everybody.
Doc?
Doing great. Glad to get back in the swing of things. Like you said, we've had a lengthy hiatus, but
Yeah,
some security
real life.
issues, some migration, and some tweaking, and we're back with a vengeance.
There we go. So we're going to start off. There's been a lot going on in the news with. We don't want to call it the ADA, but it's the WCAG, the Disabilities and Accessibility Act for websites, and who's responsible for all that, and GDPR out of the EU, and the Data Privacy Act that's out there, and how that affects everybody, whether you're in the EU or not, because if you have European visitors to your website, they can apply the rules to you, which is kind of strange, but not totally unheard of. So we've been keeping an eye on that, and we discovered recently a new analytics program that's out there as a competitor to Google that is GDPR compliant because it's a cookieless analytics program. And while it is probably not as robust as what you're used to in analytics, it provides enough of the basic information that the vast majority of websites out there could probably benefit from switching to this. It eliminates a problem going forward. So what have you been able to find out about them, Doc?
Well, I looked at a couple of sites that have implemented it, a couple of guys. One guy I know who is Jeff Geerling. He actually put it on his site, and he went through GitHub to get the free open source stuff and put it on his site himself. Now he's more of a code monkey than I am, so I might feel a little bit intimidated by the process. So it's not something that I would just slap out in a half an hour by any means. I'd have to struggle with a little bit because I'm just not that sophisticated. But basically, he did a write-up on his site, and we'll provide in the video window, we'll provide the link so you can go take a look at the process. And another guy I've been following for years, Dave Rupert, has done the same thing. Both of them were very impressed. As Steve said, it's not as robust as, you don't get the drill down ability that you get with GA, but it gives you the important stuff. Where did they come in? Where did they leave? How long were they there?
Right.
The stuff that you're typically going to need on an ongoing basis. And if you're one of those folks that really detests having GA siphon all of the data out of your site on a 24-hour basis, this is a solution worth looking at. For what it offers, I was blown away at their pricing. Basically, for the bottom of the scale is $14 a month on a month-to-month basis, no long-term, or an annual for basically what's 10 months, $140 for a business, and that gives you 100,000 visits on an unlimited number of sites. So if you've got one blog or 15 sites, it doesn't matter as long as you don't exceed that 100,000 visits. I believe it went to, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 1 million on the, 1 million page views a month on the business level, which is $24 a month or $240 a year. And then if you're a little bit heavier than that, you want to go enterprise, it's for 10 million page views. That's $79 a month or $790 a year. That gives you.
I wonder.
Say again?
I wonder if this would not be a great tool for our friends with their new hosting company.
I just passed that to our friend with that new hosting company about 20 minutes ago. And I think it's entirely possible, yeah.
Because then they can offer rolled-in analytics with all of their hosting.
Yep.
and with the, $80 a month, they could, 10 million page views, and they could share it with all their clients. And this works for anybody who hosts or manages, a large number of sites.
Yep. And the beauty of it is it's on secure cloud servers. And it's real time, folks. You're not looking at what happened 2 days ago. You're looking at real time stuff, which is a major plus, especially if you're doing tests and whatnot. Some A/B testing or whatnot, and this gives you the ability to see what happened this hour, and that is a major shot in the arm, in my opinion. So the name of this is Fathom Analytics. And we're giving them a free plug because so far what we've seen impresses us. I intend to be investing in this very shortly and giving it a good shakedown. But I think it's something that's worth looking at. On their site, if you go to usefathom.com, that's usefathom.com/anonymization, you can see a write-up on how they do this. First, they actually say how they at first thought they could do it and what they tried, and it didn't work out as well as they thought. So then the next iteration was somewhat more sophisticated. And going cookieless is not a new concept, but I think that they got very innovative on the way that they have implemented this to allow them to comply with GDPR. Obviously, they would still have to have a disclaimer on their site saying, okay, we're not collecting any data such as this, those things that are covered by the GDPR. But we're not handling those, or what we get is immediately anonymized. And they've actually gone back after the fact. With their testing, they've gone back down and tried to break this pseudonymization and identify subjects, and they can't. So I think that, on the one hand, if you've played around the GDPR field at all, we know that a large portion of their judgment when the ICO is looking at whether or not you're going to be, whether your activities warrant a fine for something that happened, a major aspect of their interpretation of your situation is how much of an honest, good faith effort did you make to comply?
Right.
And I think that this is fantastic. So,
and hadn't they said that their fines were not really meant to be punitive?
Correct.
Their goal is to encourage people to properly handle data.
Yeah, obviously there's some incentivization there, but I think, and they've laid out some pretty hefty ones here relatively recently. So, but they're not even approaching the 4% of annual revenue or 20 million euro per instance that they could have, even against the big boys. So they're trying to motivate. And I think that it's going to be effective. When we start talking about GDPR, just to get off the topic a little bit, we got to realize the fact. I think that the biggest argument I see repeated over and over and over is that a European agency cannot touch me as an American company. And I'm sorry, folks, they can. You need to really investigate that. Don't accept those statements as gospel, because yes, they can. First of all, there are some reciprocity in effect where that is capable of passing through, because we've promised the EU that we'll help them enforce their regulations if they'll help us enforce ours. Okay. The other is the fact that there are regulations that are in place. For instance, the privacy shield that is in place on U.S.-based companies, that if they don't have a reciprocity agreement in effect for a particular instance, they can simply turn it over to the FTC to enforce under their own auspices. And if any of you have ever had any dealings with the FTC, or if you haven't, trust me, you do not want to. because they have essentially no guardianship over them. They can say anything they want, and they do,
Yeah.
and enforce it. And they will either destroy you or they'll make you comply. And I have a friend who went through this with them that lasted years, and they couldn't make him comply, so they destroyed him. Took a multi-million-dollar business and put it out of business through the legal fees. So
Right.
it's, you don't want to go there. So this ability that Fathom Analytics is offering to comply is a fantastic opportunity. I think it warrants looking at. The fact that we see it as a great opportunity doesn't mean you should run out and cut a purchase order and buy it. It does mean
Right.
that I think you owe it to yourself to look at it, because it really offers a lot. And if their analytics will meet your purposes and allow you to get away from GA, that removes a lot of the potential issues that you as a data controller and Google Analytics as your data processor face under GDPR.
Right. And and one of the other things that's worth mentioning, I think right now, is that even if you don't want to install somebody else's analytics tracking, you can still get decent page view information on just about every single website that's hosted out there through server logs, and things like AW Stats is built into every single cPanel hosting program, so that you can just go into your cPanel and go into your metrics area and click on AW Stats, or Webalizer is another one that they offer for free.
Yep.
And if you're really into it, you can get the raw logs.
Yep.
But you can get all this information without opening yourself up, because using a system like AW Stats or Webalizer, all the data stays on your server. You're not sharing this with anybody. So that eliminates a huge potential for problems. Not saying that, Google's likely to get hacked, but everybody else has been, so why not them? Having the opportunity to get away from Google is just nice. And for those of you who are jonesing for page speed and looking for every little place where you can cut out a fraction of a second, you got to understand AW Stats and Webalizer are already running on your systems. You don't have to use Google Analytics. You don't have to use any external analytics software. You can shut all that off and save yourself some off-site calls.
The other thing I noticed as I was going through the Fathom Analytics site is that you have the ability to share this stuff with a client. So if you put this on a client site, you don't have to necessarily take this raw data and build a report. You can actually show it to them.
Yeah.
So if you have a client that is able to look at this data and understand what you're trying to show them, that's nice. So it's somewhat similar to being able to let the client go into the GA and see this stuff. Right. This absolutely, it gives you, I think 90% of what most of us as SEOs want to look at on a regular basis, it provides. So
exactly.
I hope that we'll see a bunch of people trying this, and we'll hear from them and see how well it works out, because I definitely want to give it a whirl.
It is lacking in things like e-commerce conversion tracking.
Sure.
And it's not going to be integrated directly with AdWords or anything like that, because, well, it's not. But for those of you who just have straightforward websites, who want to run some kind of analytics so that you've got it for when you need it, there's no reason to not try something like this.
And for those of you that are capable, you can go to GitHub. Reiterate again, you can go to GitHub and you can get this open source stuff and put it on yourself and tailor it to a great degree. So you can actually embed some conversion triggers in there. I wouldn't be able to do that. That's just not my forte. But I do know people that could, and I would not hesitate in the least to hire one of them to do it for me if I felt like it was valuable to me. There are
Right.
people out there that can do that kind of stuff, and the two sites that I mentioned, uh, those are two guys right there, and there's probably 200 more.
It's nice to have an alternative.
Yep.
And and then you can stop worrying about Google. At least from that point of view.
Yeah, from that point of view, at least.
Well, I mean, just think of how much data, how many, one of the metrics that people seem to like as a vanity metric is bounce rate.
Mm-hmm.
How is Google going to know what your bounce rate is if you don't have their analytics installed on your website?
Yeah. Which brings up, an interesting question. Could your site see any detrimental effects in rankings because of that invisibility? My personal feeling is no. I don't think that there are any significant signals that are only available to them through GA.
Right.
But it's, it's hard to say. I mean, it's their algorithms are a black box to us, but all my experience tells me that nothing that they're getting only from GA is that important to them in terms of being able to rank
because
my
there's
page.
no doubt that they do not have 100% coverage.
Nope.
It just simply doesn't exist. How many new clients do you sign up a year that don't have analytics installed of any sort installed on their website?
All the time, yeah.
So
and they're amazed to hear that there's something like that available to them and it's free.
Yeah. They'd be even more amazed if they knew how much data we used to be able to get out of it.
Yeah. Well, that's a topic for a whole other video there.
Yeah.
So Fathom, use fathom.com. Play around. They have an introduction video. They also have a live demo video that you can go through. There's a lot of good information there. I think it's worth looking at. And we'd love to hear from you. Your experiences, good, bad, or indifferent on it. If you decide to give it a try, let us hear about it, because it's the kind of thing that, Steve found this and turned me on to it yesterday afternoon, and both of us spent a good amount of time going through the site and looking at their case studies and whatnot. It's my initial remark to him was, "Ooh, gotta love it. This is something that's worth looking at." But we definitely like to get some feedback from others, because we're a little prejudiced.
Well, yeah. It comes with trying to protect clients.
Yep. Okay, so I was going to share screen a little bit. One of the things I'd like to share real quick, there was, as I said, Fathom went through a couple of iterations out there. This first effort of theirs was just to create a complex hash for each user. And that would, a random SHA-256 string that they would regenerate every 24 hours. They would capture the IP address, the user agent, the site ID, and then the date. And they would hash something, and they would end up with something that would look like this. Okay. Well, you can see right there is what they would have created. And then they hash that, and they end up with this, okay? But that meant they'd be able to view every single page that a user visited, so on that date. So, which would not work. That would not accomplish what they were trying to do. So they came up with a different solution. And I thought this was very innovative and bordered on genius. So now what they do is they create a unique tracker for each page view, okay? And they add their host name and path name, and they call this page request signature, and then they create a hash that ends up looking, where did it go? Well, it was here, I lost it. Well, I'm a fine screen share, eh? Could have sworn it was in this screen. Well, anyway, rather than bumble around looking for it, they create something that changes. So when you go from page A to page B, they've got the ability to detect on page B that you came from page A, but they can't tell that user, hash name XYZ went to page A and then page B. So they can see the source. So when you arrive on a page, they can see where you came from, and then they can see where you leave to. But they can't identify it to the user, which is where the satisfying of GDPR really becomes the key thing. And they tried going back and dehashing these things, and it can't be done. So again, they're reinforcing their assault every 24 hours, but when you start taking, like this hash here, they can't go through their query logs and find it. They can find that hash, but they can't identify any other movements within the site of the entity that corresponds to that hash, because it's only page level visibility.
Right.
So it complies, and I went through it. I know the GDPR pretty well, and I looked at their comments here. They, this is the Article 26, what they are cited with being requirements, and then their response, and they're meeting it. And I don't see any potential issues, which is intriguing. And interestingly, I have a new client I'm talking to on that topic tomorrow, who coincidentally happens to be on a WordPress site. So, and they're a U.S.-based company that has a U.S.-based client base. So what they have done is they've disabled all non-U.S. IPs, and that is not a solution because it does not protect you. One of the things that people don't understand, if Steve here, who is a U.S. citizen, is on an airplane accessing my US-based site while in airspace over France, everything he does while he's in that French airspace is covered under GDPR and enforceable, okay? Conversely, if a French citizen comes to New York to visit friends and accesses my site while he's sitting in Manhattan, everything that he does is also covered under GDPR. And my company is liable for that data. So, people saying that I don't sell to Europeans, so I don't care, they better start caring. Because we're seeing GDPR, the ICO is trying to get people's attention with some relatively moderate fines for high visibility issues. And that's going to make the big boys stand up and take notice, because they're going to see other big boys getting hammered. Little guys like us who are convinced that we're not susceptible to this probably won't do anything. And at some point in time, the ICO is going to decide we're going to have to get the attention of these little guys too. I would not want to be the test case.
Good.
I mean, trust me, the 4% of my annual income is not going to finance the GDPR for any period of time more than beyond about 11 seconds. But 20 million euros, because their regulation does say whichever is larger, okay, would effectively put me out of not only business, but existence on this planet. So we don't want to be the little guy test case that they use to get anybody's attention. Oh, go check out.
Let's see how
it's well worthwhile.
Yeah. Very cool.
when I get a chance to check this out, we may want to come back to another episode and get one of the, like maybe the CTO from Fathom on board here with us, get them into the show and let them explain a little bit more how they went about it, because I find it fascinating. And it's interesting to me because, like I say, cookieless, server-side stuff is not a new concept, but nobody has ever been faced with the necessity to do it without capturing an IP address and preserving that data from page to page. So I think that hats off to them for finding a very innovative way to get around that. And it'll be interesting to hear from this guy. Hopefully he speaks English, because I don't speak Code Monkey.
Oh.
Not at that level.
All right. Well, I think that covers today's show. Unless you have something else you can bring up.
I think that covers it.
For those of you watching the show, this is Mentors on Tap, and our goal here is to provide a soundboard and advice for people who need it on a wide variety of topics, from marketing to running a business, running a farm,
fly fishing,
best alcohol. We're kind of open. Between us, we have more than a couple of years of experience in a lot of different things, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions or help you out in any way we can.
And that's key. Your questions are gold to us, because we can. Yesterday we sat around trying to discuss what's the topic we want to cover tomorrow, and we bounced half a dozen of them off the wall and decided upon this because it was a hot one for us. But knowing that there's some people out there interested in seeing a particular issue addressed is gold to us. So definitely, you can go to our email is Ask the Mentors. Our email address is ask@mentorsontap.com. Or you can go to mentorsontap.com, and there's a forum there that you can fill out and submit your questions. Or you can go to our Facebook page. Mentors on Tap is our Facebook handle. And let us know what you're particularly interested in seeing more information on. Because we're just flapping our gums if we're not providing something that's worthwhile to you. Exactly. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope it's been good.
Have a good week, and we will be back in a week.